Good afternoon, everyone. To call this special call meeting of Public Facilities and Safety Committee on December 11th to order. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Sarah, can we confirm?
Yes, sir, I have.
Thank you. Can I have approval of the agenda for our one item today?
I'll approve it.
So moved and seconded.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead and open up for citizens' comments. Do we have any, Sarah?
No, sir, we don't.
All right. Is there anybody else in the public that did not sign up that would like to speak? We will close citizen comments and move on to our one and only action item. Number 6, approval of resolution to adopt the recommendation of the Sales Tax Advisory Committee regarding consideration of a 24 sales tax referendum. I believe we have Mr. Moss today. Absolutely. Jared, do you want to open it up ahead of time?
Yes, I will. Yep. Thank you for that. And first of all, thank you, Public Facilities, for allowing us to meet. I know there was a charge by County Council to come back before the end of the year. Well, like your last meeting is tonight. So for the committees to do their work, this was an opportunity. So I appreciate the opportunity for you to make this special call meeting. In introducing Dean, so Dean served last year as the chair of our sales tax committee. We followed a similar suit in pursuit of a transportation sales tax last year. And then obviously we moved forward with the green space sales tax. And so this year was a little bit different charge, of which Dean will make mention as the resolution from County Council in June on what was the committee's responsibility to look at and look into. One lesson for everybody in future opportunities for yourself: if you say yes to a committee, make sure you're there at the first meeting. Because when I talked to Dean initially, are you interested in being part of this committee? He said yes, but as long as I'm not the chair. And as so it goes, he was absent out of overseas for the first meeting. And I told everybody else, I was like, Dean said specifically he did not want to be chair. Oh, that's all right. He really wants to be chair. So for the sake of the committee, we're glad he was chair, but do not miss the first meeting if you're making it to a committee. But Dean was great. We had a fantastic committee. Again, this committee was set up a little bit different than last year's. We had 6 members instead of 17. And I feel like we've got the cream of the crop as far as we had an all-star committee. We had 1 new member from last year's committee. And from day one, everybody was in on the charge that they were presented with. We didn't have any really discussion that was way out of bounds, left side or right side. It was just all constructive discussion. Everybody was really looking at the region as a whole instead of just one pocket or the county or the other, as well as looking as a long-term planning. So each and every one of the members, I appreciate them serving and for their service, what they've poured in their investment to this work product, which Dean will tell you about further. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Yes, I tried to avoid being chairman of this particular committee, but I was getting back from a trip and plane was delayed and I didn't find out about it until he called me and said, yeah, you're chairman. So that's okay. Very briefly, you got our memorandum. And I'm going to go over what I consider to be the high points, and then I'm available for as long as you need for questions or anything else. If there's something really technical that you need to know, Jared's here, and he can deal with that. You asked us. We're going to advise you. We think you ought to do a referendum in November, next November. Place upon the ballot 1 cent sales tax. Additional sales tax beginning the following year and extending for 15 years. Proceeds from this tax will be expended by the county for a series of critical transportation and mobility projects I could be reading it right off there, couldn't I? Vital to the health and safety of the residents of this county. Further, the committee recommends that a standing citizens oversight committee be established to assist the county council and the staff in the prioritization and implementation of the projects. Your charge to us essentially was to provide you with information that identifies the need and where required, the specific projects for the various referenda questions. I'll point out that we looked at the idea of one tax, we looked at the idea of 2 pennies, and we looked at the idea of 3 pennies. In other words, the super penny approach. Our determination was that given the fact there's already a penny in place for the green space, that the best approach would be to start with 1 penny. And if you just look at the list of the projects that are considered in this and the amount of work that those projects will require from you and from your staff, it seems kind of crazy to add a whole nother piece on top of that right now. Let's get this sorted out and on its way. And then if the issue wants to come back and deal with that, that's probably my phone, so I apologize. Yeah, say no. 6 members on the committee, 1 representing Hilton Head, 1 representing Bluffton, 1 representing myself, representing Beaufort and Port Royal, and 3 folks representing the unincorporated areas of the county. As Jared said, great people. 5 of the 6 had been on the previous committee, so they understood what we were doing. They understood most of the issues that were involved and had to be worked on. You gave us a charge to look, as I said, at 3 separate, at a bunch of different things. And there are 3 separate referenda that the legislature has in place that we considered. One was the transportation referendum, which is what I'm going to talk about. The other was the capital projects referendum. A transportation referendum by statute can go 25 years. We're not recommending that. The special capital projects referendum, I think, is about 8 years. And then there is an education referendum. Now, we were doing this work just as the school board's referendum was coming up for a vote on election day. And we talked about it a little bit to kind of think, what happens if this doesn't pass? What happens if the school board referendum does not go through? Would it be rational from our perspective to come forward to you and say, we recommend that you put a penny on to raise funds for the education operations, for the school board and in the improvements that are necessary? Of course, that referendum passed, so we moved that to the side. We looked at the capital projects referendum. There's real opportunity there for us. We came up with some, I think, rather interesting ways to figure out how those dollars conceivably should be allocated between the county operations and municipal operations, and at some point in the future, Jared can get into those details with you. But we ultimately settled on transportation. And nobody on that committee needed to be convinced of that. 3 of them coming from Hilton Head to get to the meeting every Thursday night, just like you guys do, having to deal with the traffic and having to go back and deal with the traffic and having to deal with just an incredible congestion that seems to be just increasing daily. And the same thing up here, a mess all the time. So we've got to do something about it, and that was our determination. The staff was great. You have a wonderful staff. Jared and Carol Puryear were just wonderful. I mean, they're there all the time. They worked at it. We just had the best feeling about them. It's very complicated stuff, and they're very, very good at it. So we set this thing up to look at it from 2 perspectives. And the first is what I'm calling big projects. These are very specific projects that are out there on the table right now. And just a couple as an example, Reimagine Rebo Road, or for example, the Triangle, 278, 170, and Argent Boulevard. The project in Bluffton, those are the kinds of things we're dealing with. All of them fairly expensive stuff, $40 million each or more. So we looked at how much we should be putting into that area, and we settled on about half of the first piece of this thing. which was about $650 million. What we're recommending is 15 years, 1 penny, comes out based upon our analysis and a fairly conservative projection, we think $1.6 billion available to the county over that period of time. So we're looking at a big pot, a couple of big pots of money to do things with. We're looking at, out of that big projects, roughly $300 million south of the Broad, roughly $175 million north of the Broad, and then $175 million put over here on the side. This is going to go on for 15 years, and we can't anticipate what we're going to need 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What's going to happen? We don't know. And so we need to have money available to the county to do projects that are going to be needed as we go forward down the line. So $175 million is tucked away, waiting to be spent sometime in the future. None of these projects have been designed yet. There are some that have done preliminary designs. We have some sense of what's going to be needed, but no design work's been done. So these are estimates as of today. And as we've all experienced in the last 5 years, an estimate made today may be meaningless 5 years from now. So we've got to be prepared to do what we have to do. And that other pot obviously is there to help us if we get into that situation. So let's talk about the projects we're looking for. The first is the triangle of 170, 278 and Argent Boulevard, about $100 million. And that has to be a cooperative project with Jasper County. I mean, Jasper County really controls most of what's happening in Argent. You move out away past Sun City. It's, in a lot of cases, Jasper on the right and Beaufort on the left. So this has got to be a cooperative effort with Jasper County. We have not talked to Jasper County. We've not had any conversations with respect to how they see this or whether they will be positive about this, but we can't escape it. We're going to have to do it with them. Secondly, Rebo Road initiatives, Reimagine Rebo Road, the project that the county's been working on now for a year or so. That involves the city of Beaufort and the town of Port Royal directly. We're looking at the interconnectivity, safety, capacity, and attractiveness along that alignment, all the way from the courthouse, Beaufort Town Hall, all the way down to essentially the bridge across Battery Creek before you get to Paris Island. A long way, and a lot of interest. The cities are very interested in this. The county's done a good job putting these proposals forward. There's been arguments, there are going to be more arguments, but it's a good project and needs to be done. Highway 46 in Bluffton, running all the way out. There are intersection improvements along the main stretch coming out of town and working its way out. Once we get to the four corners there, and the circle, we are looking at 4 lanes out to the Jasper County line. So that's a big project, and it has implications for something else that I'm going to get to in just a minute. Secondly, Ladies Island corridor improvements. This is a key question here. In the 18 referendum, we had, I think, 40 million in there, 35 or 40 million in that referendum for corridor improvements. The majority of those projects have not been completed. One major project completed, which was a right turn lane coming down Sam's Point Road to put you on going back into town. But there are concerns out there among the community on Ladies Island that we said we were going to do these things and we haven't done them. So there's 40 million in there that will be added to that pot, and we ought to be able to get them. They're all under design, but they haven't been tackled yet. So it's important that the message we have to be conveying is that we understand people are concerned, but this is going to happen and we're going to do it.
Mr. Morris,
yes,
quickly.
Sure, York, I'm sorry.
In your language here, you're taking it all the way to the Chowing Creek Bridge improvement?
Well, that's basically how I defined it. I mean, maybe it stops at Walmart, I don't know, but
yeah, that's a good definition.
Because it's generally from Walmart out, we're probably not going to see a whole lot more intense development.
Right.
But There's feeder traffic, you've got other stuff coming in, you've got projects out there on the edges that need to be dealt with.
Thank you.
All right. And then there are three pots of money, one for one for Bluffton, one for Hilton Head, and one for Beaufort and Port Royal / Northern Beaufort County. 60 million each. Generally, for example, on Hilton Head, the incredible demand that people now have right on the table saying the traffic circle at Sea Pines is a nightmare. We got to fix it. We've got to fix it. As an example, Bluffton, we had a series of projects in the last referendum that we talked about with Bluffton, but a lot of that stuff has got to be made decisions, and there are some tough ones down there have to be made by town council. They're not the kind of decisions I don't think that you guys want to make on some of these projects. It needs to be their decision. You build them, you fund them, you make them work for them, but they've got to call the ball on that one. Also, north of the Broad, transportation improvements, which is a general category, City of Beaufort, town of Port Royal can work together with the unincorporated areas and all over the place. I mean, you've got projects running on out toward the air station. You've got projects out further out on St. Helena Island that need to be done. There's lots of different stuff. Some of them are small, some of them are big, but there's monies there to do that. And then Highway 278 projects enhancement, it's another 60,000 there. My belief is essentially that goes toward the bridge and toward projects in and around the bridge area that are going to have to be done as we move forward. So those are the big projects. And then we put 175 million in the pot for the future. Then we have what we call project programs. I've always referred to them as buckets. You've got a series of buckets, and into those buckets, you've got some money, and there are projects which are in those buckets. Most of them are smaller. They're smaller, and they're future projects of one kind or another, but they're smaller stuff. Mass transit, good example, $100 million. We have no mass transit master planning going on in Beaufort right now. We have an incredible amount of congestion, which could be conceivably at some point in the future relieved to some extent by mass transit. We also have monies in there for some airport improvements that need to be done, conceivably for ferries and other types of things. I know you're wrestling with Defusky right now. There are opportunities conceivably in the future for fast ferry service along the waters, getting people from northern Beaufort County to southern Beaufort County and back. Those are ideas that are out there. They need to be thought about, looked at carefully. Safety and traffic flow, safety improvements generally, intersections, lots of intersection work, pedestrian work that needs to be done in the future. And then emergency evacuation and resiliency.
I had just a question.
Yes,
Would that
ma'am.
include the when you say safety improvements, sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got some places here, and York and I have talked about it and other times. We have roads going to major communities, in northern Beaufort County principally, that right now, at a king high tide, we've got water on the road, salt water on the road. Can't have that. You can't be expected to drive your car back and forth through salt water when the tide's high. So we've got, and let alone what happens if we get a hurricane, if we get a significant weather event, folks aren't gonna be able to get off the damn place. So we've got to deal with stuff like that there. It's right out there in front of us. A lot of pavement, resurfacing and preservation. What we want to do is have enough money in the bank to be able to do pavement work for all the roadways in the county, state, municipal, county, municipal owned. Those are, and the idea is, and I think Jared's got a lot of good information about this and has worked on it, essentially how we keep good roads in good shape. We don't sit there and let them, pave them and then let them go to hell and then try to get them back together. No, you keep them, keep filling with them, you keep tending to them and keep them in good shape, cheaper in the long run. 180 million for pathways. In the 18 referendum, I forget quite how much was in there, 30 million, I think, for pathways. We had a whole list of pathways that we were going to do. We haven't done them. I speak as Spanish Moss Trail person, so I'm pretty familiar with these types of things. But we really recommend that we go back to that list that the voters approved, and put those guys at the top of the list.
Dean?
Yes,
If I might.
yes, sir.
Back up just to hear, you talked about the pavement and resurfacing and preservation, and you talked about how do we keep good road in good conditions. Well, we have an issue in the rural parts of the county in St. Helena, as well as out in the rural areas of Dale, Sheldon, Big Estate, Grays Hill, where we have bad roads that needs to be brought into good conditions.
That's correct.
And so we need to emphasize and focus on getting those dirt roads paved to where we wouldn't have here in the 21st century of the county of Beaufort, we still have a lot of residents who don't have a paved road to get to their primary residence.
Right, I understand that.
That's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable. These funds here, definitely for it. And then there are other pots along the way that can be tagged for things like that. The issue that we talked a lot about in the committee was the issue of privately owned roads versus publicly owned roads. In other words, we have county roads in the rural areas. Those are completely eligible for all this work. We have to acquire rights of way, widen them conceivably, but they're the kind of projects we need to be doing. We have lots of private dirt roads, and these funds would not go to private dirt roads.
Correct.
So we have to figure out if there's a plan in the future for helping folks that live on these private dirt roads, if there are ways to start to think about converting some of those back to over to county roads, depending on the number of people who live on them, et cetera.
Well, that's an additional issue, but my primary concern is not the private roads, but county-owned dirt roads.
Right.
That need to be brought into good condition.
I agree.
It's unfortunate that we've got a good road paving program in place, but we've been paving roads for the last 12, 15 years, and we still have a long ways to go.
A long way to
So
go.
these funds should, some of those roads should be targeted in these funds to make sure that we bring all the roads into Beaufort County up to date to where all the roads in Beaufort County, county-owned roads are paved roads and not dirt roads. None of us sitting on council, none of you sitting here in public, I would think would want to drive your modern day vehicle, your Bentleys, your Mercedes, your Teslas through some of our dirt roads after a rain
good
or
rain.
inclement weather. You wouldn't want to do it.
Jared, one question, and you gave us a number, at the rate, knowing the dirt roads, we've accounted for them, at the rate we are paving those roads now, roughly how many years did you say it would take to get us to the point where they were paved at the same rate we've been going along at?
Around 40 years.
40 years.
40 years.
That's my point.
Right. So, it's an issue, it's a problem, and it's something we're gonna have to address. There are monies here, I think, that can go a long way toward speeding that up, Mr. Dawson. I believe that there are resources here to help get that done. That's a decision you guys have to make. You're gonna be setting the priorities.
Okay.
And then, transportation technology, access roads, lots of right-of-way acquisitions, transport technologies, enhancing the way traffic is managed on streets, lights. The technologies are increasing and improving every day. We have, you can anticipate, coming up to a stoplight, and if there's nobody else around, it's gonna let you go through, or it'll change from red to green so you can get through it. But it all involves the computer, and so those kinds of things. And then finally, green belts. Green belts are a legitimate expenditure under this transportation package. And what we're anticipating is that those funds would be available using the same process that you're now using for your green penny investments. I'm not sure whether, I don't think there's anything in the statute on this that would prohibit those dollars essentially coming from you and being put into the pot that the Green Penny Committee is working its way through. So, but those are things out there in the future. We have some implementation recommendations, one of which is an oversight committee, similar to what the school district did, and which was very successful. I think it worked very, very well, particularly as they got that bond issue passed. We're suggesting 7 members from around the county.
Do you want to be chair?
No, I do not
Just
want to be chair. And essentially, the committee should, what we're saying is, and this particularly affects the pots that I talked about, should make a call each year for projects from all the stakeholders, counties, municipalities, the LATs, council of governments for general projects. And again, there's a list there that shows the kinds of things that might be considered. These funds are going to take, it's going to take some time and some priorities, but my feeling is that the demand is huge out there. And so if we play this right, I think we're going to be in good shape. We need to bond the big stuff as quickly as we reasonably can and get those dollars out there so that we can get going on these projects. And then right now, as I said at the very beginning, we really have no mass transit plan in this county, a real comprehensive one that looks, how the hell do we move people from here to there, from where they are to where they want to go, and avoid having them locked into traffic jams for, an hour or 2 hours a day. We've got to figure that out because it's not going to get any better. People want to be here. There's a lot of people. We've got one of the most popular places in the country for people to move to. Anyway, I want to thank the council. Just get my last little page out here. And what I've said is we weaved through this process and reviewed the gravity of the assignment and the critical need for improvements and new components for our local mobility. It became quite evident that there's much to do. It appears that we are not just behind the 8 ball, we're under it, in my opinion. And we'll take a coordinated public relations effort to move this referendum forward for a better mobility future for all of us. I just want to speak on behalf of the committee that you appointed and say thank you for this opportunity. We hope that what we've produced will be valuable to you and that we'll be willing to take the first step to moving this thing along and getting it done. So I am happy to answer any questions. We've all signed the thing. As I said, this was a unanimous effort on the part of the members of the committee. And as Jared indicated, we argued a lot of the little details, but the concepts were unanimously supported all the way through. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what I've got to say. And again, any questions?
Oh, I know I do, and I'm sure they do too. But I'll say this, let's go ahead and open it up. How many of you guys have questions? Quite a few? No? All right, Gerald, go ahead.
Gerald's over there, but that's all right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we all look alike. That's all right. Mr. Morris, I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to thank you for what you've done. Continuously, you've been a good leader for this county. So I just want to say thank you to that. Also, I see Mr. Solomon is here. I don't know whether you want to recognize all of your committee members.
I
know
should
Mr.
recognize him because he came in when the back was turned.
Yeah, Mr. Lennox.
A member of our committee, very, very useful, helpful guy, very smart,
Mr.
capable person.
Lennox said he was going to be online, so I don't know whether he's online. So I don't know, but he said he was going to be online probably. But this one comment I'll just make, and y'all brought it up in your meeting the other day when you raised the issue. Mr. Campbell raised the issue of bicyclists, where you got your safety and traffic flow. If we can add that to it along with pedestrian. And the only reason I'm saying that because South Carolina has been ranked high, particularly in pedestrian accidents. But I think bicyclists are also part of that as well. So I think we just need to emphasize where we can,
Right.
Pedestrian as well as bicyclists and stuff, because that is an issue and a concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to thank the committee too, did a great job in a short period of time. I'm very happy to see mass transit mentioned. I know we all like to drive our cars, but there are a lot of people who can't afford to drive a car back and forth to Hilton Head or other places to work, and we need a master plan for mass transit. I think as we have more and more tourists that's gonna be important too for a whole county. So, I think this will be money gathered and well spent.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Just one point I didn't do. I wanted to introduce Charlie Wetmore, who was also from Bluffton. He's the Bluffton representative, was on our committee. And again, he's the guy that called me and told me I was chairman. But we've been friends for a long time, so he's big, very great help to us. Thank you.
Anybody else over here? Hey, I have a couple questions. First thing, that was a big task we put on you guys. I remember in January when Jared brought this forward to a couple of us. We said, okay, where do we get started? I do want to applaud you guys for getting it done on that time frame. I know it was tight. It was a lot to get done. As well as council making sure that we did this on a large election year. I think that goes a lot to the people that were doing this on a presidential cycle. If we decide to move forward. A couple questions I do have, maybe for you or Jared. What are the dates for green space, the end date on green space?
24.
The end of 24, right?
Where they hit 100
It's only
million.
2 years.
100 million or 2024, end of
So that's what I had written down too. So my question would be, honest opinion to you, because you're more knowledgeable of this than I am, just like the people on the committee and Jared. Is 1.6 billion enough to complete all these projects in the time frame you think we need to do before more arise? And I know that sounds crazy to ask, we're talking 1.6 billion, but with the continued costs of things going up and the continued need in other areas that we have not, I know we put some away for it, but we haven't even thought about yet.
Well, and Jared can chip in here, but the answer is the big projects that we've listed. Given the monies we have, if you look at the 1.6 billion and you say, you know, the total amount available for that big project list, that's probably okay. You're gonna be, they'll come in more expensive probably than we've suggested, but you've got that $175 million sitting over here on the side. And if you need to pull from that to keep those babies going, you can. What you'll end up with probably is in the pot projects, you may, in some cases, need to be moving money around. So in other words, money that's in pot A may need to move to pot B if the project joined. But in general, the list of projects that will continue to arise that need to draw on those funds is gonna continue to go. I mean, every year, you're gonna have people wandering in and saying, I wanna do this, I wanna do this, I wanna do this. So, could we go for 20 years? Could we go for 25 years? Charleston has done 25 years. Who else has done 25 years?
Richland's done 22 years. Dorchester just did 15 years. Spartanburg's considering 25 years. I think Oregon County's considering 25 years.
I guess my question would be, one of the things you opened up with was you guys decided on 1 penny because we had the green space. With green space dropping off before this one takes effect, is that something that we should consider? Should it be 10 years at 2? I know these are a lot of things to be debated. I promise I'm getting there. I'm getting there. There's a lot to it, but these are things that need to be discussed in the public so my question is gonna be, are we gonna be allowed to continue to discuss this and tweak before we finalize this after county council meeting and then over the next couple months? Or is this a final vote after this gets moved to county council to adopt it as it's written today?
Mr. Chairman, I think you ought to give the taxpayers a little bit of break as well. Is that gonna be discussed as well? Or are we gonna, keep on asking for more money?
This is a recommendation from this committee. As it said, it's going to be a resolution to adopt their recommendations. It will then come to county council for 3 readings and a public hearing.
Correct.
With tremendous input before we finalize a referendum question to go to the taxpayers in November of 2024. We, the council, will make the decision about the timeline. Is 15 years adequate? Should it be more or less years? And should we have 1, 2, or 3 pennies?
Right.
So that's gonna be our
Yes.
discussion, and decision. This is what they did to start the ball rolling. We have tremendous needs in this county in the areas of transportation and other things. They focused on transportation. That's what this is about today.
So my point behind this question was, before we got into some of that, not to get into all the details, but the point is, today we are just setting this up for us to finish finalizing these details and these questions.
That's correct.
This isn't us making a rash decision to push something through quickly. This isn't us getting a 400-page document in front of it and not reading it like happens at the state or the federal level, other than the points we want to. That's not what's happening here. So my point of asking that question and putting it out to the public is for people to realize this has been a process since January, and this is the next step in the process. And as Mr. Chairman pointed out, we're gonna have another steps after that to ask some of those questions that a lot of us can have. There'll be plenty of time for debate on that. I did have one more question for you, and then I promise I'm done running my mouth. The part about the municipalities, did you guys, in your intentions behind it, is that just to hand over the money and let them decide which projects to use that on? Or is there a sense of oversight or management done by the county on those dollar amounts of having to approve the projects through it?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that, that in a very general sense, you write the checks. Okay, so that's the first point that needs to be recognized. You guys have the bank account. Our process was, particularly on the list of smaller projects, was to have a committee that brought you recommendations. And input to that committee would come from both cities and unincorporated and unincorporated areas. On the major projects, we've got 3 in there, one for Bluffton, one for Hilton Head, and one that covers Beaufort and Port Royal and the areas up here. Again, to some extent, those projects probably will be brought to you by the municipalities and saying, this is our project. We want to do this for Sea Pine Circle, or we want to do, this
We
for
have the money set
whatever it is.
aside in our
You've got
account.
the money over here. And so there will be some negotiation inevitably that's going to have to occur between council and city councils over how these things are laid out. But as a general sense, the idea was, let those municipalities know that there's a pot there that circle around it and said, this is monies that you guys have available for projects that you can convince the county that you need to get done.
Yep.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
That's the way I saw it as well, just making sure we were on the same page with it. Anybody else?
Just one quick one. This proposal is also a leveraging proposal, right?
Very much so.
Okay.
Once you get, with these dollars, the state has money, the feds have money, there are dollars out there, but you always need to have that leverage, as you know, from the bridge project. You've got to be able to sit up there, wave those dollars around and say, we've got this much, we need to have a little more from you and a little more from you. That's the way I do it.
All right, last thing is short question regarding the Ladies Island corridor improvements. Is 40 million enough to actually complete those projects? I hear it just about every day, and I'm one of the people too. I think those projects it was short-sighted, I think, to limit the amount of funding that was there in the 2018 referendum. Is that sufficient to finish out those projects that have been identified?
Yeah, so as Dean mentioned, in today's dollars, yes. So we're actively working on those. With our current estimate, we're at $72 million for all the projects. So we have $30 million from the 2018 sales tax, so this would be $40 million. And we're actively searching for grant funds all the time. So we feel confident that this would satisfy the 2018 project that was conceived.
Thank you.
Can I entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Oh,
Motion.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Mr. Glover with the second. Thank you. Any objection? Thank you, gentlemen. This will be approved with no objection. And with nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this will now go to council.